Bienvenue, hello, and welcome. Today we have another book. We are actually continuing our investigation of the works of Virginia Woolf with the book Orlando. Again, we have another book with green on the cover. This is going to play hell with my green skin. Anyway, before we start that, remember we have our shop, we have books, we have writing services, we have other merchandise on our Redbubble shop. Go along, check it out. There is so much stuff now. So much stuff. Enjoy, check it all out. Anyway, that is that for that. And today we have our book. Our book is Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This is one of the books that it is probable that you have heard of, unlike our other books, because I was being a bit cheeky and choosing some of the more obscure books by Virginia Woolf to talk about, simply because there isn't any videos. Actually, there is not a huge amount about Orlando, which surprised me because, well, true, it is not as accessible as Mrs. Dalloway may. It is an incredibly famous book. There is a very good film by Sally Potter, which is actually how I came to the book. I saw the film by Sally Potter with Tilda Swinton as Orlando. And then I bought a copy of the book, not this copy. I was only a teenager. I bought a copy of the book and I got stuck halfway through. Like quite literally, and abandoned it, and it took me years before I went back to the book and could get through the bit that got me stuck. It was after Orlando returned home from Turkey and is in England and trying to understand how being a woman is different to being a man in England. Yes, we will explain all this. So, Orlando is an epically big story. It starts in the reign of Elizabeth I, when Orlando is a boy. This is a biography. It is a biography in much the same way that Flash is a biography. It starts in Elizabethan England, and Orlando is a boy, a very young man, and he is brought into the court because his father is a courtier to Queen Elizabeth, and quickly becomes a favorite. After Elizabeth, and I think it is she who bestows the house on Orlando, the house that forms a big narrative point throughout the novel. Orlando, after the death of the Queen, during the reign of James I, is still a courtier, and he falls in love with the daughter of a Russian ambassador, only to discover that this is not necessarily a great idea. Orlando sleeps through the internegram. If you do not know what the internegram is the period of the civil wars and the Oliver Cromwell. So between the civil wars and the death of Charles I, who was the son of James, and the restoration with Charles II. Very embarrassing for the English. We are very sorry. We made a terrible mistake. We killed your father. Well, you come back and be king. That's got to make you feel stupid. We never did that. Once we got rid of our king, gone, and there was emperors. Very bad form to have to ask the son of the man to your kid back. We didn't do that. Anyway. So, during he slips through the internecrum. There is a period where he becomes the patron to a poet who basically uses him to write his poetry and then ridicules his attempts at poetry. Fair enough. You know, this is why all the ideas that gentleman wrote Shakespeare. That is a little bugbear me. Anyway, he engages in poetry. I think then this is the internet comment that he sleeps for, and then he is appointed an ambassador to Turkey, where he engages in a very intense relationship with I think he is the leader, the Turkish leader, a very important man in Turkey. A very intense friendship. It is. I do not think that it is a sexual relationship, but it is certainly a very intense relationship. After this, a revolt in Turkey, in Istanbul, leads to Orlando again falling asleep. Orlando again sleeps. But this time, when Orlando sleeps, to avoid the violence, Orlando changes sex. Orlando becomes a woman. Orlando leaves Turkey now as a woman, unrecognized by anybody who had previously seen them as a man, and returns to England. She gains the assistance of Turkish nomads, whom in the text are called gypsies, but really they are Turkish nomads, and makes her way back to England. And this is the bit at which I got stuck. I got stuck at this bit when I started reading this when I was a teenager. It is actually a very, it doesn't seem to advance narrative. It is a meditation on death, and it is more philosophical. It actually is a very naughty part of prose, and I am not surprised that at 15 or 16 I just could not work out head nor tail how to get past that part of the prose. Obviously, having read the entire book, I have managed that. It's essentially Orlando, now equipped in fashionable women's clothing, discovers the world of the salon, but discovers, unfortunately, that while the poets may have had contempt for her as a young man of the aristocracy writing, now the poets have absolutely no place for her as a writer, but only as a muse. She may pour tea for Alexander Pope, mais she cannot have an opinion, a position, and certainly not be a writer, which is a little bit of a misnomer for Virginia Woolf to have put this in the 18th century, as her ladyship has made known. The 18th century is actually a time when women did start to write and to put a name to things and to actually have a literary voice. The majority of the early writers that we see are from the 18th century, and the novel is when women do start to write. While Virginia Woolf is making a very particular point about the status of women and the discomfort that Orlando feels in her new body, and her changed status, it is not exactly historically correct to say that women had absolutely no position as in a literary world. So at this time also there is a lot of confusion about Orlando's home, because Orlando is now a woman, which is a problem. Orlando is also, is Orlando dead? Is Orlando a woman? Is Orlando married to some Spanish dancer? Who knows? The courts will now decide. The courts will now decide on the status of Orlando, which is less pleasing. When by the 19th century, Orlando has received the notice, and the courts have decided that Orlando is a woman, and as a woman cannot own property, and therefore must either marry or have a son. In the 19th century, she meets Shelmedy, an adventurer from America, and it is with Shelmedy, I was going to say Sheldon, Shelmedy, that Orlando engages for the first time in a successful and mutually beneficial love affair, something that she or he has not in their long life managed to enjoy. And it is at this point, at the beginning of the 20th century, that we leave Orlando walking into the future. Stylistically, the novel is a biography. There is pictures in there which are supposed to represent Orlando at different times in their life. Some of these pictures are of Vita Sackville West, whose house, Vita Sackville West was a well-born lady who was a great friend and lover of Virginia Woolf. This book was written at the same time as a very intense period of their relationship. And Orlando is modeled after Vita Sackville West. Preface. Yes, the book itself is to Vita Sackville West. It has within it, in the same way that a biography would, it has a preface. It has all the people for whom the author is thanking, the same way that you would for a biography. It has a table of contents with chapters and a list of illustrations. These are all things that are less, apart from a chapter, and even then a list of chapters is less a convention of fiction and more a convention of bibliographic writing. This is an impossible biography because Orlando is an impossible character. I think that one of the other things that makes this interesting is Orlando's change in gender. In fact, complete biological shift, because Orlando comes to mother a child. While much of the confusion around Orlando, which occurs in the second part of the novel, Virginia Woolf wrote to highlight and to discuss the position, especially economic and political and social positions of women. Today, and she talks of this in terms of the fact that socially, politically, and legally, the full personhood of Orlando is called into question because he became a she. He went from being a full citizen of their country to this lesser position. And this causes this great confusion within their society, and that there needs to be a legal precedent put down to make sure that we put them in the right box, because we could not possibly have a person free floating around who does not fit into the male or the female box. Orlando finds this quite perplexing because from Orlando's point of view, I am Orlando. I am not the body that I am in. I am myself. And that is the focus of the novel, is that Orlando is always Orlando. Today, it is a book that I think one can look at in terms of trans identity, in terms of gender non-conforming identity. Why does that make us feel? Why do people feel so uncomfortable when you cannot pin down exactly which box to put someone in? We are now or many people, not all people, but many more people are more comfortable with the concept of gender as a spectrum, and that people will fit all along that spectrum. That is a perspective that is getting to be increasingly understood. And ironically, that is something that Orlando does speak to. It is a resistance to the being put in, because you are this, you are limited to this. Because you are this, you are limited to this. When Orlando is a man, Orlando is a complete person. Orlando is never referred to as the son of, the brother of, the father of. Not to say he is anything other than a son. As a woman, Orlando must have that familial or marriage relationship to a man, without being the wife of, the daughter of, the sister of, the mother of. The society finds it very difficult to place Orlando in a category. To be just Orlando, as she had been as a man, is quite difficult for her society to fully comprehend. It is not difficult for her to comprehend, but it is very difficult for her society to comprehend. So in that way, it is very, very interesting. So Orlando, it is a challenging book. It is not what it looks like. It is a biography and a novel and a political statement. Very, very interesting book. So there is another book for our Virginia Woolf. So I will see you again with another book. Au revoir. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.